after joining up with the crew, I've had some helter-skelter days, let me tell you. So when we arrived in Zega Grande, I knew I needed to get myself some fishing done. Reset the old noggin. Found a nice, quiet pond and dropped my line. Bless me taters. Must have been hours past with no bite. Finally, I decided to pull up my rod and check if the bait was still hardy. But there weren't no bait, no hook, and no fish. Only a lonely little bobber remained on the line. Right, well, what about me traps? I was halfway through the search when I realized, blast, I left them in the lodge. What a day, what a day. But it was too late in the noon to go back for them, and I had other business to attend to, like getting back to the pond and staring out at the clear water. In that moment of stillness, the fishies swam out of their hiding spots. There were big ones and little ones, and the whole school of them reminded me of my teaching days. Each of my disciples was unique in their own right. Had me some slow learners and some fast ones, some goody two-shoes and some real punks. I learned me some good lessons from those kids. My top student, Grace, never wavered in her particular sense of justice, and her commitment to her training was ironclad. What a waste. Rains, my youngest pupil, lost his way for decades after leaving my tutelage, but he ended up killing Grace in my stead. He was selfless, thinking only of his master. They say the master extracts potential from the student, but I fear I've ruined more young lives than I've helped. Makes a fisherman wonder how they all would have turned out had he just kept well enough to himself. I turned Grace into a monster. Not a day goes by I don't regret honing her skills. Unfortunately, she had the gift and the gumption to go far, and I exhausted all my knowledge on her. If only I had focused more on the why of my teachings rather than the what. Huh? I swore I felt a nibble at my rod, but when I pulled it up, there was nothing to be found. That's when I remembered I still hadn't hooked or baited the line. That was odd. I was getting antsy. Maybe it was because I forgot the traps, but I couldn't relax just sitting there anymore. I decided to pack up and head back into town. You see, the mind is like a creek. You want to keep it healthy. You gotta keep the waters from stagnating. But sharing them too much, and you risk losing all your fish. I decided to head to Sierra's shack and replace some fishing gear, hopefully restoring my brain pond in the process. But just as I was dipping my toes into the placid waters of the lures and bait, I heard a rustle from behind. And to my surprise, they were my crewmates, picking up a package. Said they were bored at the inn and asked if they could come fishing with me. Youngsters so bored they wanted to go fishing? First time for everything, huh? While I was hammering out the finer points of fly casting with the captain, Sierra Carte piped up. Said she'd come across a pretty tasty rumor.
Yep, apparently there's a legendary fisherman in this skydom that people have started calling the Fisher God.
I'd heard rumors like this one before, and they always stank like fish guts. Catching 10 fish with one cast, netting a whole consortium of crabs. By yourself? Gah! If I had a fin for every story like this, I'd be a pretty scary sea monster by now. Then again, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intrigued. There's a scale of truth to every story, so there must be a reason they call this person the Fisher God. Guess you might say my interest was piqued. Because if this fella were half as good as me, he'd make a mighty fine rival. And maybe that's just what I needed.